Recently, my partner introduced me to a practice that I've come to love. Getting myself a treat whenever I do something hard or something that I don't want to do. It's so good, life-changing. She's here, you can credit her with it. Doctor's appointment, get a treat. Sent an email I've been putting off, get a treat. Pay a bill, get a treat. Have a hard conversation, get a treat. Make dinner when I'm really tired, get a treat. Set a boundary, definitely get a treat. This has transformed how I understand the world. A treat doesn't have to be fancy or expensive. Sometimes it's a piece of chocolate or a fun beverage, a sticker, or treating myself to a fun adventure. But what it has taught me is how to celebrate myself, how to celebrate the little things. And I've realized that when I celebrate, I don't just feel good, I feel more grounded, more alive, more able to face what comes next. And this week, in Parashat Ki Tavo, our weekly Torah portion, the Torah teaches us something remarkably similar, that joy, that celebration, it's not optional. In fact, it's commanded. Twice in our Torah portion, we are told not only to do the mitzvah, the commandment, but to rejoice while doing it. When we bring the first fruits of the harvest, the Torah says, "You shall rejoice together with the Levite and the stranger in your midst." And again, after offering sacrifices of well-being, we are commanded to rejoice as we eat them. The rabbis of the Talmud, the Jewish framework for debating what it means to build a world, take this seriously. They ask, what does joy actually look like? And the answer, joy is not abstract. Joy is embodied. In the Talmud, they teach that joy is expressed in singing. And another place in Talmud, they say that joy comes from eating meat and drinking wine. That can be beyond meat, don't worry, or tofu. In other words, joy takes practice. Joy takes treats. Joy is something we enact. It's not just something we feel. And then joy appears a third time in our Torah portion. This Torah portion outlines a long list of curses for those who fail to follow God's commands. In the midst of these curses, the Torah says that all this destruction will come because you did not serve God with joy and with gladness of heart. What a radical claim that the absence of joy itself can bring devastation. That to live without joy is actually to live under a curse. When I first read this, I struggled with this idea. How do we access joy in such a difficult moment in the world? Isn't it selfish to feel unbridled joy while others suffer? How do we experience joy without being too Pollyanna-ish? My teacher, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum, who is one of my models for leading through moments of crisis, was a rabbi in New York in the heart of AIDS. She would regularly do dozens of funerals a week, and her teaching helped me reframe this idea. She teaches that the absence of joy can bring devastation. Why? Because joy is not extra. Joy is resistance. She teaches that joy itself is an act of spiritual and political resistance. I'm going to say that again. Joy itself is an act of spiritual and political resistance. Every time we insist on our right and our God-given obligation to experience a piece of joy or happiness, it is an act of resistance to a system of power that thrives on our misery, our apathy, and our despair. Oppressive systems depend on our misery, our exhaustion, and on our hopelessness. But joy breaks that cycle. Joy sustains us. It fuels us. Joy makes us dangerous to the forces that want us small and quiet. And writer and thinker Adrienne Marie Brown in Pleasure Activism echoes this truth. They teach that pleasure is not frivolous, it is freedom. Pleasure reconnects us to our bodies, to our desires, to one another. Pleasure makes the worlds we're trying to build irresistible. In other words, joy is not a distraction from the work of repairing the world. Joy is the work. It is at its very essence what makes the work possible. Which brings me back to the get a treat practice. What if our religious lives, our Jewish lives, were structured this way? Not only obligation, not only guilt, not just they killed us, we survived, so let's eat, but also a built-in practice of treating ourselves. What if being Jewish, living in line with Jewish values, being in Jewish community, every act of justice always came with a treat? What if they were always followed by celebration? Actually, Torah already gives us this practice. And if you're in this room, you're doing a pretty good job of it. It's called Shabbat. Shabbat comes every week, like it or not, no matter how good or how bad our week was. Jewish tradition says, stop, pause, experience joy. And what would it look like if we treated Shabbat as our weekly practice run for radical joy? A time to escape into music and song, to savor good food and drink. Here it doesn't have to be meat. To nap, to laugh, to rest. We get to make Shabbat our treat. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel teaches that Shabbat is a palace in time, a moment when we step away from the world as it is to taste the world as it could be. It isn't about escaping, but about refueling to step back into our world, reinvigorated, reimagined, and reconnected. The treat of Shabbat is that it is a fixed amount of time that obligates us to step away. And yet many of us still feel guilty about joy. I know I do. We worry that celebrating while others suffer is selfish, that pleasure in a broken world is frivolous, even shameful. But Torah insists otherwise. Joy is not what distracts us from compassion. It's what makes compassion possible. It's not an abandonment of responsibility. It must be the energy that sustains us. The mystics teach that God hid away a primordial light at creation, called the Or HaGanuz, which we can sometimes glimpse through acts of holiness. Joy works the same way. It may feel hidden, buried under despair or guilt or exhaustion, but it is always there, waiting to be uncovered. And Shabbat is our training ground for uncovering it. So much of Judaism and our Jewish story can be rooted in trauma and destruction. But what Shabbat and Jewish joy can be is a radical way to reclaim and make Judaism fun and our own. It teaches that Judaism can be both about finding hidden light and creating it. Just like my partner's practice reframed ordinary tasks, turning an errand or a bill into a reason to celebrate, Shabbat reframes our lives. It turns an ordinary week into a holy rhythm, one punctuated by joy. It trains us to remember we're not only workers, we're beings of joy. So as we prepare for the high holidays, we often think about repentance and judgment. And yes, that work is real. But this year I want to suggest another kind of tshuva, holy return work. The turning back to joy, the discipline of celebration, the mitzvah of the little treat. This may feel really hard. And if you're a classic DC overachiever like me, it may feel especially hard. But let's try it. Let's try it together. So may we enter into this season brave enough to rejoice. May we practice joy in small ways, in treats and in songs, in meals and in moments of rest. May we practice joy in big ways, in Shabbat and in community. May we remember that joy is not only our right, but our obligation, not only a gift, but an act of resistance. And may joy, our treats, our songs, our hidden light sustain us for the journey ahead. Shabbat Shalom.